The battlefield has changed. No longer are we simply talking about tanks and missiles on land. The real war is happening on the high seas, where the stakes are not just military but financial. While most of the world watches the land-based fights, a crucial vulnerability has been exposed in Russia's economy, its oil exports. This is no longer a territorial struggle. It's a brutal, high-risk economic campaign targeting the shadow fleet. These ships, operating in secrecy, are the backbone of Russia's war machine. They transport oil, bypassing sanctions and trade restrictions, fueling the Kremlin's military efforts. Without these vessels, the entire war effort would come to a halt. Ukraine has shifted tactics. Rather than facing Russian soldiers head-on, it is now attacking the heart of Russia's military power, its economic lifeline. Disrupting the oil shipments doesn't just hurt Russia's economy, it strikes at the core of the Kremlin's war funding. Each disrupted shipment is a blow to Russia's financial stability, forcing Moscow to defend its vast, uncontrolled network of trade. This is a new kind of war, an economic war fought with low-cost, high-impact strategies. The question now is clear: will the shadow fleet continue to survive, or will it crumble under the pressure? The answer will shape the future of this conflict. The problem is simple, yet profound. Russia's economy relies heavily on its oil exports, but these shipments are now under attack. The global economy, especially the West, has imposed sanctions to limit Russia's ability to sell its oil. They believe this would starve the Kremlin of funds, forcing them to retreat. But Russia has adapted. It's not just a matter of stopping oil shipments, it's about dismantling the entire system that enables Russia to bypass sanctions. The so-called shadow fleet plays a crucial role. These are not ordinary oil tankers. These ships operate in secrecy, with false flags, hidden ownership, and no oversight. They've become a lifeline for Russia's war effort, enabling the Kremlin to continue fighting while bypassing sanctions. Ukraine now faces a choice. It can either continue conventional warfare, fighting Russian troops on the front lines, or it can strike directly at the heart of Russia's economy. Ukraine has chosen the latter. By targeting these tankers, they aren't just slowing down shipments, they're cutting off the financial resources needed to sustain the war. The question is no longer whether Ukraine can defeat Russia on the battlefield. The real question is, can Ukraine cut off the financial lifeblood of this war machine before it's too late? To understand the scale of the problem, we must look at Russia's reliance on its oil exports. Oil has been the backbone of Russia's economy for decades. The revenues generated from these exports fuel not only the state budget but also the military machinery. For years, Russia has used its vast reserves of oil and gas to maintain power and influence across the globe. However, sanctions have changed the game. The West's attempts to limit Russia's access to global oil markets are disrupting this lifeline. But Russia is not just sitting idle. It's adapted, shifting its focus to what's now called the shadow fleet. These are vessels operating under the radar, using false flags and questionable ownership to avoid scrutiny. They have become the key to keeping Russia's oil flowing, enabling the Kremlin to continue its war effort. This isn't just an isolated tactic. This is part of a larger geopolitical shift. The world is moving into a new phase of conflict, one where economic power is just as important as military might. And in this new phase, Russia is learning how to survive not by fighting on the battlefield, but by dodging financial blows and exploiting loopholes. So what happens next? Can the West stop this shadow fleet? Or will Russia continue to outmaneuver the sanctions and keep its war effort funded? The shadow fleet operates in secrecy, hidden from the prying eyes of the global financial system. These vessels are masters of evasion, using a network of false documentation, fake flags, and altered ownership records to avoid detection. The ships travel under the radar, quite literally and figuratively. AIS, automatic identification system tracking, is often disabled, and ship-to-ship transfers occur in remote waters, making it nearly impossible to trace the origin of the oil being transported. Every detail of this operation is designed to bypass sanctions. A typical voyage starts in a Russian port where crude oil is loaded onto the ship. Almost immediately, paperwork is altered, and sometimes the ship's flag changes in mid-journey. This makes it harder for any nation or regulatory body to trace the cargo back to Russia. By the time the oil reaches its destination, it appears to have come from somewhere else. The ownership structures are just as convoluted. These ships are often registered to shell companies in countries with little or no maritime enforcement. Nations like Gabon and Mongolia provide convenient flags, allowing these ships to operate with minimal oversight. This legal fog enables Russia to keep its operations running while avoiding international scrutiny. It's not just about evading sanctions, it's about creating a system that makes it nearly impossible to disrupt. The shadow fleet is a lifeline for Russia, and dismantling it would require not just military intervention, but a complete overhaul of global maritime law. So, how long can this hidden network survive? Will the international community be able to pierce through the fog, or will Russia continue to exploit these loopholes to fund its war? The existence of the shadow fleet highlights a massive flaw in the international sanctions system. Designed to limit Russia's oil revenue, these sanctions were supposed to cripple the Kremlin, but they failed to do so. Why? Because Russia found a way around them. The sanctions relied on transparency, on tracking shipments, verifying ownership, and monitoring financial transactions. But the shadow fleet operates in the opposite way: secretive, untraceable, and free from global oversight. The price cap imposed by the G7 was meant to control how much Russia could earn per barrel of oil. But the shadow fleet has bypassed this entirely. By using false flags and hidden ownership, Russia can sell oil at market prices, effectively nullifying the cap. This allows Russia to continue funding its war effort despite the financial pressure applied by the West. And it's not just the price cap. Western insurance markets, which were supposed to block Russia's ability to insure shipments, have also been circumvented. With the fleet's hidden operations, these tankers sail without the need for Western insurance, further weakening the sanctions regime. The result? A patchwork sanctions system full of loopholes. As long as Russia can keep its oil flowing through this covert network, the sanctions will be meaningless. The question is whether the international community can close these gaps, or if Russia will continue to exploit them. Realizing that sanctions alone won't stop Russia, Ukraine has launched a new phase in the battle: a kinetic intervention using naval drones. These drones are the perfect weapon: small, cheap, and deadly. They're transforming the way naval warfare is conducted. Ukraine has begun targeting the shadow fleet directly, attacking these oil tankers with precision strikes. On November 28th, Ukraine's Sea Baby drones hit two oil tankers linked to Russia, the Karos and Virat, off the coast of Turkey. Then, on December 2nd, the Midvulgatu was struck. These were not random attacks. They were carefully planned. Each target was selected based on intelligence, including the ship's ownership, its cargo, and the risk assessment. The message was clear: the shadow fleet is no longer untouchable. These attacks are not just about sinking ships, they are about sending a signal to Russia. No matter how hidden your operations are, they can still be destroyed. The use of naval drones allows Ukraine to project power hundreds of kilometers from its coast, striking in the Black Sea and the Mediterranean. This is the future of warfare, a conflict fought at sea, with high-tech weapons and zero tolerance for secrecy. The question is, can these attacks disrupt Russia's oil exports enough to change the course of the war? Or is this just the beginning of a larger, more aggressive strategy? The effect of this war is not just felt by the governments and the elites, it's felt by the people. Every time a shadow fleet tanker is hit, the consequences ripple down to the everyday citizen. Russia relies on the revenue from these oil shipments to pay its soldiers, buy drones, and keep its war machine running. When that revenue is disrupted, the effects are immediate. In Russia, the economic strain is becoming impossible to ignore. The price of basic goods is rising, unemployment is on the rise, and the government is struggling to maintain its grip on the population. People are starting to ask questions: how long can the Kremlin keep funding the war? And more importantly, how much longer will the people tolerate the suffering? Ukraine, on the other hand, is feeling the direct impact too. Their cities are under constant threat and their economy is in a state of constant flux. But with these strikes on the Shadow Fleet, Ukraine is sending a clear message. They are fighting not just for their own survival, but for the survival of millions of innocent civilians who are caught in the crossfire of this war. The cost is high, but the message is stronger. The people are no longer passive observers. They are active participants in the battle for their futures. The ripples of this conflict extend far beyond the borders of Russia and Ukraine. The Shadow Fleet and its operations are having profound effects on global geopolitics. Nations around the world are feeling the pressure of these covert oil shipments as they struggle to maintain their own economic stability while facing a shifting balance of power. Countries like India and China, key buyers of Russian oil, are walking a fine line. They need Russia's oil to fuel their own economies, but they also risk becoming entangled in a global dispute they would rather avoid. Their continued support for Russia's oil trade places them in the crosshairs of Western sanctions, even as they try to sidestep them through intermediary deals and opaque financial transactions. At the same time, neutral countries are finding themselves increasingly caught between two opposing forces. Turkey and Egypt, for example, are concerned about the safety of vital shipping lanes like the Bosphorus and the Suez Canal. A catastrophic accident involving a Shadow Fleet tanker could block these key choke points, disrupting global trade and sparking an environmental disaster. The stakes are rising and the pressure is mounting on all sides. The question is, how long can the international community turn a blind eye to this shadowy war? And at what point will the economic and geopolitical costs become too great to ignore? The future of this conflict hangs in the balance, and there are three possible paths ahead: the best case, the middle ground, and the worst case scenario. In the best case scenario, the international community unites with a common purpose. Sanctions are strengthened, loopholes in maritime law are closed, and the Shadow Fleet is dismantled. Russia is forced to scale back its military operations due to financial strain. Ukraine's strikes continue to disrupt the flow of oil, weakening the Kremlin's grip on the war. In this scenario, peace could be restored, but it would require unprecedented global cooperation. The middle ground is a prolonged conflict with no clear winner. Russia continues to operate the Shadow Fleet, finding ways to adapt and push back against sanctions. Oil still flows and the war grinds on, with both sides suffering significant losses. The global economy is affected, but not to the point of collapse. This scenario would likely lead to a war of attrition, where the ability to sustain military power through economic means becomes the key factor. In the worst-case scenario, Russia escalates its actions both militarily and economically. The Shadow Fleet becomes more entrenched, and the war spills over into other regions. Nations like China and India are forced to take sides, drawing the world into a broader conflict. The global economy could suffer a severe downturn, with energy prices spiking and markets crashing. This would not only change the course of the war, but reshape the global order as we know it. The future is uncertain, but one thing is clear: the path forward will be determined by how the world responds to the Shadow Fleet and the economic warfare being waged. The Shadow Fleet is no longer a hidden network. It is a symbol of the new face of warfare, one where economic power, secrecy, and military might intertwine. The international community faces a crucial decision. Will they allow this hidden economy to continue to thrive, or will they take decisive action to dismantle it? If the Shadow Fleet is allowed to persist, it will fuel Russia's war machine indefinitely. The longer it operates, the more entrenched it becomes. But by taking action now, by closing the loopholes, imposing stricter sanctions, and taking military steps to disrupt these operations, the world can cripple Russia's ability to fund the war. The longer the world waits, the more costly this battle will become. This is the moment of truth. The global order is at stake. The future of international law, the stability of global markets, and the lives of millions of people depend on how we act now. The time to act is now. Will the world stand by and watch, or will it unite to take a stand against the forces that are threatening peace, stability, and freedom?